So, this morning, from space to the subconscious. Did you watch the space launch this morning? Yeah, I had to leave when Richard was just getting ready to talk about the experience, Richard Bronson. Yeah, what an experience that was, just to watch it. So it's kind of hard. I was thinking on the way driving over here this morning, how do you go from having this incredible experience of going out to the edge of space and then talking about the subconscious? You know, and well, space is our future, right? So we have to get our subconscious mind taken care of first, get it healed, and then we can look further beyond, I guess. So this morning I'm talking about the subconscious mind and fear. The Master Moria gives us two beautiful examples of two women who were fearless. Helena Rourke, who was the founder of Agni Yoga, whom he calls Urasvati, and also Upasika, Helena Blavatsky, the founder of the Theosophical Society. In the paragraph 37, found in Supermundane, here Master Moria tells us that Urasvati carries fearlessness in her heart. You know, it's one thing to read that statement, but when you really begin to think about it and try to compare yourself to this great woman, this great Tara, it's like going out to space, you know. He said of Urasvati that she carries fearlessness in her heart. And he goes on to say, we affirm that this quality is accumulated through faith, but also lengthy experience. Upasika, Helena Blavatsky, he said, was an example of complete fearlessness in life. She was courageous in all circumstances, and no fear could intrude. The life of Upasika was filled with so many occasions for fear, and it was sad, he said, to see how many persecutions came together, how her name was slandered. She had no means, and accusers threatened her from all sides. Verily, she was a touchstone of fearlessness. One can cite many examples throughout the ages. Every one of us has frequently had occasion to show fearlessness. So that's what I did. Personally, I'm not going to talk about it, but just made a list of those moments in my life that I was fearless. And what's so wonderful to engage in that little exercise is that when you have fear, then you can go back to that list, remind yourself when you were fearless and that whole experience, what it was like. And then hopefully that will carry over to that next opportunity to experience fearlessness. MM says it should not be thought that we are protected in our earthly lives from all onslaughts of darkness. He says, don't think that. Those who fulfill an earthly mission do so under earthly conditions. And then he talks about themselves, capital T, themselves. He says, people usually think that we dwell in safety and think of us as supernatural beings. He says, well, relatively speaking, we can overcome much, but this battle is a real one. He says we remain victorious because the hierarchy of light cannot be conquered by darkness. He says, we travel on far-off worlds where we gather many lessons in fearlessness. The alien conditions of the planet's unusual atmospheres can affect the heart of the visitor. Our sister Urasvati knows the sensations of these distant flights. She knows a particularly difficult feeling upon the return of the subtle body. Now, he's not talking about Urasvati in a spaceship. He's talking about leaving her body and going to these other planets. And then the difficulty upon return of the subtle body. Isn't that interesting? So I just find this verse so perfect for today, with the launch of the space plane. He says there are always complications, and much courage is needed during these experiences. One should consult our records of these distant flights to recognize the degree of daring that they require. And later he concludes by saying, you can imagine our joy in finding workers worthy of our trust. Their striving spirits do not fear being tested. Only hypocrites fear that the ray of light might penetrate into the depths of their being. Open hearts form a beautiful necklace for the higher worlds. And that was from verse 27 in Supermundane. So what is the subconscious? The subconscious mind constitutes the three lower planes of the mental plane. In other words, the realm of the subconscious is located within the lower mental plane. There are 3 levels to the lower mental plane, and these levels are called levels under the threshold. So we know about the mental plane that there are 7 subplanes to the mental plane. But the subconscious is in the 7th, 6th, and 5th sub-levels, which are called the levels under the threshold. So this is the realm of the subconscious. Then we have the conscious mind, and then we have the higher mind. So we have the 7th, 6th, and 5th sub-planes, or the realm of the lower mind, which is called levels under the threshold. But then we have the conscious mind, the realm of the conscious mind, and then the higher mind. The conscious mind refers to the mental realm, middle realm of the mental plane. It is called the 4th subplane of the mental plane. So there are 3 realms in the mental plane: the subconscious, the conscious, and the higher conscious realms. The realms of the higher conscious covers 3 levels, which would be 3, 2, and 1, or 1, 2, and 3, depending which way you're counting. In our non-conscious moments, whatever we feel, whatever we imagine, whatever thought forms that we identify ourselves with, goes into the subconscious. The levels under the threshold and can accumulate there age after age, life after life. Many of these accumulations are the root cause of our fears. Fears which we must eliminate if we want to experience the heights of the supermundane worlds. These accumulations occur during certain unconscious moments in our lives. So now what we're learning about is the subconscious, the contents of the subconscious mind. You will not find this information in psychology books. They're just not there yet. Psychologists and therapists recognize these fears, but they only recognize and try to help their clients identify their fears based on this lifetime. And sometimes genetics, and DNA. But the teachings take us much further than that, more deeper than that. So the first statement here that's really, really important to help us understand about the accumulations that go into the subconscious mind is when we have unconscious moments, such as when we suffer, when we are worried, when we fall into anxiety, when we are in the grip of fear and anger or hatred. And then what's interesting is also an unconscious moment is when we slander and fall into treason. These experiences go into the subconscious. When we are insulted, when we are defeated, when we have failed or have been beaten down, when we live in vanity, these moments of vanity occur during unconscious moments and go into the subconscious mind. When we see horror, and when we are under the influence of alcohol and drugs, or even anesthesia. This is actually a short list. Isn't that interesting? What is also interesting is to realize that not only does our subconscious register things while we go about our day-to-day life, but also when we are asleep at night. For example, sometimes you will meet with negative conditions on the astral plane, just like what you experience in the physical plane in your day-to-day life. During these moments, you collect astral events in your subconscious. So that's one example. Another example is that certain frightening dreams or attacks from your enemies or dark forces go directly into the subconscious if you are not awake on the astral plane. In other words, if you are not conscious on the astral plane, then these experiences will go into the subconscious mind. Some dark forces project very depleting, destructive images into your subconscious, which eventually will affect your life, your day-to-day life, your thinking life, your emotional life. Some people are happy and content to sit almost like in a trance state in front of their TV and watch movies about serious and dark levels of crime, violence, ugliness, and horror. During those times, they are unconscious. The energy, the images, the colors pull that person into, almost like a vortex, into that movie. And that hour and a half of movie is an unconscious moment for you. And even when you're in a movie theater, it's even worse because the whole theater is dark. And you're focused totally on that screen, not awake. So all of those moments go into the subconscious. The other day, a person asked why vampire movies have become so popular. And this is the answer. We can see how the opposition against crime and violence and horror and ugliness is disappearing. That sense of being against crime, against violence, against horror, against ugliness is disappearing. Why? Because we are so, it's like, I have this phrase called numlock. You know, it's on your computer keyboard, right? It's our brain. It's our unconscious, but we're going, our consciousness is moving into numlock. And numlock means that we are so used to seeing these images that we're no longer fighting against it. We're no longer in opposition. So these things are the evidences that the accumulations of the subconscious mind are controlling the life of many people. When the subconscious mind accumulates a sufficient amount of events, it slowly blocks your conscious mind. Now I'm going to repeat this because it's so important for people who are working on themselves. When the subconscious mind accumulates a sufficient amount of events, it slowly blocks your conscious mind. The subconscious is blocking the conscious mind and takes control and rules your life. Even if 10% of your conscious mind is intact, only 10%, the subconscious will block that 10% and dominate your life. With observation, we can see what is happening to so many people, affecting humanity and affecting the planet. We must learn about these things and then try to change them, starting with ourselves. And this is why we call Agni Yoga the teaching of life. See, we are being taught how to be real, how to clean out, purify the subconscious so it can no longer block the conscious mind. We have to work on ourselves. We must carefully and seriously study the teaching about the nature of the subconscious, and then to boldly, fearlessly look at ourselves, to look at especially the root of fear that's found in the subconscious. Fear, this is how the teaching describes fear. It is like a many-armed octopus, a many-armed octopus in the subconscious. My eyes are going. Fear is a many-armed octopus in the subconscious. It relates almost every element. Fear, this is so amazing to me. Fear relates almost every element in our subconscious to everything else. Fear. This is why the major trigger, the push button in our mind, is fear. People who know this fact manipulate. They manipulate us by using their formula of fear. It's like, I am so tired of hearing about the percentage of people not vaccinated in this world. You cannot turn on CNN longer than 2 hours without hearing about vaccination. This is, well, I can't talk more about it because there's no time. We won't have any time left. But they're pushing the fear trigger, not allowing us to make a decision, from our own intuition. Once we are afraid, or once the fear penetrates into our subconscious then begins to mobilize and release elements of hatred and anger and jealousy and revenge and treason and associated images and imagination. Dark forces use fear to occupy and to possess us. Some of our dreams and nightmares are the results of their projections that, when associated with the fears in the subconscious, create horrors and paralysis in our life. The teaching, speaking about fear, gives certain formulas, which tells us ways it can be used very effectively to eradicate fear. So here we are, we've learned about the subconscious, we've learned about fear and the many incarnations of accumulation that is now stored in the subconscious, but now we're given a remedy, a formula. One of them is a mantra for us to say, which can be repeated daily many times with concentration and faith and willpower. And this is a very well-known mantra. It's very short. Let reality govern my every thought, and truth be the master of my life. You can say that several times every day. The next suggestion or formula is this. The first is to still your physical body, then quiet your astral body, and then link up with the light of your higher self, the realm of the upper 3 levels of the mind, and reason out the proper procedure or method in meeting your difficulty. Having exhausted all the more rational methods, having clearly seen a course of action, then you raise your vibration as high as possible and call down from the intuitional light on the situation. If your intuition and reasoning faculty produce harmony, then proceed, knowing as a fact that nothing can happen but what is for the best. What is for the best? You are being guided, and he who sees the end from the beginning will make no error. Isn't that interesting? Such an exercise brings in the fiery current of light from the intuitional plane, or the realm of intuition, and burns away. It literally burns away. Fire, fire, fire. Everything is so fire with Agni Yoga. It brings in, this exercise brings in the fiery current of the light of the intuitional realm and burns away all those accumulations of fear from the subconscious. But also, and this is interesting, not only burns away the fear from the subconscious, but also the conscious mind and correspondingly the astral plane. So if we had a whiteboard up here this morning, I could show you the diagram and how the relationship, even of the conscious mind, has this relationship with the astral plane, or the astral realm. So as the fire and the light of the intuitional plane is burning away the history of fears in the subconscious, it is now beginning to penetrate into the astral realm as well. This just blows me away, this next statement. It also burns the sediments of fear circulating in the bloodstream. I wish I knew more about that, and that's a goal to learn before the end of the year, to understand the sediments of fear circulating in the bloodstream. I have to talk to a medical esotericist about this, and I do have someone in mind. So if I learn something, I will let you know. So the fire of the intuition also burns the sediments of fear circulating in the bloodstream. Now, realize that there are certain sources of fear that only the teacher or master can fight against. And as such, they will provide a shield for our protection. Here's a story. It's kind of a personal story, but it's an example. Many years ago, I was engaged in battle with a person who had a so-called secret power. And this battle was taking place on the astral plane. The person astrally would visit me night after night in my dreams, trying to instill different fears in me, trying to subjugate me, to bring me under his control. So I finally went to my teacher, and he said he would go to battle for me. And he said, don't worry, not to worry. That evening, I was able to watch that battle take place between my teacher and that entity. In seconds, the connecting link between the attacker and myself were both broken with that sword of protection by the teacher. And I can now engage in these battles. And the reason is because I've been tested many times. And in these tests, we learn. What do we learn? We learn that we are the self, the capital S self, and that there is no power in the world that can defeat us. You learn that the tests burn the sediments of fear circulating in your bloodstream. These tests and exercises bring in the fiery current of psychic energy from the intuitional plane and burn away the accumulations of fear, not only in our subconscious, but also, like I said, correspondingly with the astral plane. From the book Supermundane, it says, from remote times, people have been accustomed to fear so-called death. They were always intimidated by hell, and at the same time they were not told about the meaning of perfectment. Now the Master is telling us about humanity in general. They are afraid of death, and they have not been taught about self-perfectment, evolution. One cannot ask people to be brave if they do not know where or why they are on earth and where they will be directed when liberated. We can entrust our co-workers, this is the capital O, meaning the great ones, we entrust our co-workers to repeat as much as possible that they can learn about and experience the great eternity and the continuity of life. So here the teaching is giving us hope, giving us an understanding of infinity, of the continuity of life, and then the challenge is to have these experiences is to work on ourselves, and especially with fear and the accumulations that have landed in our subconscious realm, life after life after life. The great ones say, we have not left, but have voluntarily remained on earth. We have consciously accepted earthly life. He's talking about certain masters and senior initiates and disciples have not left, but have voluntarily remained on earth. He says we have consciously accepted the earthly life. We could not be far away, but choose to remain with the suffering ones. Our vigil would not be unswerving if we were influenced by fear. As physicians, we know what devastation fear produces in the human organism. And he says, the supramundane says, earthly physicians should distinguish a special kind of sickness caused by fear. Let them experience our attention. Let them understand how harmful is fear. And he concludes by saying, do not think that fieriness comes by itself. It must be cultivated through many lives. So now I'm going to, just for the last few minutes here, talk about elementals and the subconscious. The subconscious mind has a very close association or connection with certain entities which are called elemental spirits. The elemental spirits are of 4 kinds: earth, water, air, and fire. People can use them with good or bad motives. These elemental spirits can be drawn to our subconscious dramatizations and ensoul certain parts of our subconscious material. Then they force the conscious mind to follow blindly what they present. Earth, water, air, and fire elementals. For example, the earth elementals are connected to wealth, money, and so forth. Water corresponds, of course, to the emotions. Air, to mental knowledge. And fire, creative works and spiritual values. Remember, we're told that we can use these elements with good or bad motives. Food, water, various emotions, thoughts, and virtues or vices increase or decrease the elements that are existing in our bodies. So here's one example, and I'm going to close with this. I said that the elemental spirits can be drawn to our subconscious dramatizations and ensoul certain parts of the subconscious materials. This happens in a very interesting way. For example, a woman is full of criminal tendencies and images in her subconscious mind. There is a man who hates her. Through the currents of the thought forms of hatred, this man unconsciously directs the elementals to that woman. Those elementals, driven by the currents of hatred, are attracted to the subconscious thoughts of this woman. The elementals ensoul such subconscious thoughts and then likes to see them dramatized. For example, they flood the consciousness of the woman with destructive imagery and bind her to the movements in line with the hatred the man has demonstrated toward her. Did you get it? If you don't, watch the YouTube later on. They'll be posted later on today. It would be wonderful if we had time to have a discussion with this. But the essential point being made is to recognize the cause or the underlying cause of these dramatizations and to learn how to stop them, such as those two exercises we just talked about. So these elementals cause personal stress and strain. They connect all those people who have common ties with each other, and what happens? Chaos. Chaos is created in their lives. There was one of the secrets of the advice given by Christ when he said, love your enemies. See, now this takes on a whole different dimension. Love your enemies. If love is present, elementals do not involve themselves with the destructive activities. When we have hatred and malice and fear, we pull out all the corresponding destructive elements from our subconscious mind and let the elementals ensoul them and play as actors in the dramas of our life. This is so powerful. I mean, part 2 is coming next Sunday, by the way. This is so powerful. It's a formula. It can be diagrammed. We have exercises now to really help us work on ourselves instead of falling into letting these elementals and dramatizations run our lives. So it is possible. So think about it this week and be ready to come in for part 2 next Sunday.